Hello students, welcome to the channel. In this video, we'll solve the first two passages of the English section of the Special Testing Form April 2019, Form Z15. So let's begin. Passage 1, the cable car ladies San Francisco feat. San Francisco is famous for its cable cars. In operation since 1873, passengers travel through town on cable cars, moving and gripping a cable that is constantly in motion just below the street. Now, when I say in operation since 1873, this is a modifier which refers to the cable cars, right? Because it's the cars that are in operation since 1873. So when I have a modifier in a sentence, the part after the modifier should start with the noun that it refers to. So if you look at these options, the only one that starts with cable cars is option D. In operation since 1873, cable cars transport passengers through town, moving by gripping a cable that is constantly in motion just below the street. So here the answer would be option D. Their old-fashioned look and open-air seating have made them a tourist favorite. They likely would have ceased operating, however, if it hadn't been for Friedel Klassmann. Okay, if the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, the paragraph would primarily lose. So I'm talking about this sentence, right? If I delete this, what would the paragraph lose? So the first sentence tells me that San Francisco is famous for cable cars and that they have been in operation since 1873. This tells me why they are attractive to tourists because of their old-fashioned look and open-air seating. And here I'm told that they would have stopped working if it was not for the efforts of this man. So if I delete this sentence, the paragraph would lose an indication of how long cable cars have been in use, details that show the appeal of cable cars, information about how cable cars move, a brief overview of the cable car system. So you can see that the answer would be G because these are the details of the cable cars, their old-fashioned look and open-air seating, and these are the details that make them attractive to tourists. How long they have been in use was given in the previous sentence. They've been in use since 1873. How they move was also given in the previous sentence. They move by gripping a cable. And a brief overview. This does not give you a brief overview, so G is the answer. They likely would have ceased operating, however, if it hadn't been for Friedel Klassmann. So here I'm saying that they are a tourist favorite, but they would have ceased operating. So this, however, is a contrasting connector. Now, when I use however in the middle of a sentence, it acts as additional information, right? And like any piece of additional information, I need to put this between a pair of commas. Because you can actually say the sentence without however, right? You can say they would have ceased operating if it hadn't been for Friedel Klassmann. So however is a connector which is used to connect with the previous sentence, right? So it is basically there to aid the reader in understanding the meaning, the flow of the passage, right? But grammatically, it's not essential. And so you would keep it between two commas. So option A. A semicolon is not correct. A semicolon is used to connect two independent sentences. And the part after the semicolon here is not independent. Similarly, you can't have a full stop. And you can't have a full stop here. So option A. In January 1947, San Francisco Mayor Roger Lapham proposed a plan to rid the city of cable cars. The cars, he argued, posed a safety threat because the cables were old and might snap, resulting in a runaway car. They were also a financial burden on the city. He proposed replacing the cable cars with buses that would operate reliably on the steep streets of San Francisco and be profitable. Now here I'm saying buses that would operate reliably on the steep streets of San Francisco and be profitable. Now, if I put a comma here and a comma here, then this part becomes additional information, and that is not correct because this is important to understanding what the sentence is. So option F is not correct. I can't have a comma after buses because I'm defining buses by the fact that they operate reliably. So H and J are not correct either. He proposed replacing the cable cars with buses that would operate reliably on the steep streets of San Francisco and be profitable. So you don't need any punctuation here. Option G. Klussman, the president of the San Francisco Federation of the Arts, and she was a fan of cable cars, was unconvinced. So what is my main sentence? Klussman was unconvinced. And I'm describing Klussman as the president of the San Francisco Federation of the Arts and a fan of cable cars, right? Because this is a descriptor, right? So I don't have to say, or rather, I can't say she was or Klussman was, because the descriptor should not be independent. The independent part is Klussman was unconvinced. So the president of the San Francisco Federation of the Arts and a fan of cable cars, so it's option D, was unconvinced. In March 1947, Klussman called a meeting of the leaders of 27 women's civic groups, forming the Citizens Committee to Save the Cable Cars. Led by Klussman, a fan of cable cars, the group rebutted the mayor's arguments in a press release. Now, this is a redundancy question. What is redundancy? When I use information or not words that are not needed because they are repetitive, right? Now, I already know that she was a fan of cable cars. It's given here, so I don't have to repeat that. Okay, who was unconvinced by the mayor's plan? That's also given here, so that's not needed. And the fact that she was the group leader is given right in this sentence, led by Klussman. So you don't have to say anything, you just have to say led by Klussman. The group rebutted the mayor's arguments in a press release. Cable cars were safe, they argued. In fact, cable cars caused fewer accidents than did buses. So first thing I notice is I have to say than did buses, right? Comparative, not THEN. So this is out. Fewer accidents than. This is correct. So this should be my answer. Okay, a few is not comparative. I have to compare the number of accidents caused by cable cars with those caused by buses. So I have to say fewer, not a few. And less cannot be used for accidents. Less is used for uncountable nouns like air, water, salt, right? It can't be used for countable nouns for which we use few. So therefore, it's B. Additionally, cable cars made money for the city by commending tourism. Now, to commend is to praise, right? And that doesn't make sense in this context because cable cars can't praise tourism, so it's not right. Encouraging is correct, right? Cable cars can encourage tourism, so I like this option. To sanction is to allow something to pass or allow something to happen, so that doesn't make sense in this context. And to reassure is to kind of give someone hope or give someone succor about something that has happened. So again, doesn't make sense here. So it's G. The writer wants to divide this paragraph into two in order to separate Lafham's arguments from Klussman's response to them. The best place to begin the new paragraph would be. Okay, so what was Lafham's argument? He said that they posed a safety threat. He also said that they were a financial burden. He proposed to replace the cable cars with buses, right? Now, this place at C is when I start talking about Klussman, the fact that She was the president of the Federation of Arts and a fan of cable cars. So she was unconvinced. So this is the place at C where I can start a new paragraph describing Klusman's response, right? So point C. With the signatures of 50,000 supporters, right? Signatures of someone, not over, around, or as. So with the signatures of 50,000 supporters, the committee's amendment was granted a spot on the ballot that November. Still, the mayor wanted to scrap the cable cars. Klusman realized that the best way to protect the cable cars would be to pass an amendment to the city charter, and the city would be required to retain them. So here I need to say it would be the best way to protect would be to pass an amendment to the city charter that would require the city to retain them, right? Because if I'm describing the city charter as something that would ensure that the cable cars are retained, then that's concise and that's also grammatically correct, right? And that is important. I don't need to say too many words when fewer words would do, right? So the city charter and the city would be required. I don't have to repeat and the city because I can describe or define the city charter as something that requires this. Again, I don't have to repeat amendment because the amendment would bring about the change. And this is wrong, not only from the point of, repeating information, but also because a comma between two independent sentences causes a comma splice. So this is also right. This is also wrong. So the answer is C. Okay, now question 12, we have to rearrange the sentences. So we know that in the previous paragraph, I had finished with the argument that Klusman made for retaining cable cars. So here it would make sense to say still the mayor wanted to scrap the cable cars. So even after listening to all those arguments, the mayor was not convinced. So I want to start with sentence 2. Klusman realized that the best way. So the next sentence would be how she responded to the mayor's refusal to accept her argument. She realized that the best way was to bring about an amendment. So I'll go with 3 after that. And then the signatures, because the amendment required signatures, and so the committee's amendment was granted a spot on the ballot. So it would be 231 G. 2 days before the election, Klusman put signs from a previously eliminated cable car route on a cable car, which she then paraded through town to remind San Franciscans of what was at stake. So which she, I don't have to say Klusman in brackets because I know that we are speaking of Klusman. And I don't have to say through the town of San Francisco because I know that the context is San Francisco and even the sentence mentions the residents. Which she then paraded through the town, then indicates after, right? So this is also redundant. So just D, which she then paraded through town to remind San Franciscans of what was at stake. On election day, her efforts paid off. Many voters supported the amendment to save the cable cars. The writer is considering revising the underlined portion to the following: 77% of. If the information is accurate, should the writer make this revision? Yes, because it specifically shows how much support the amendment received. So this is a good answer, right? Because many is vague and 77% is like a high majority. So that's more specific and gives support to the fact that Klusman was able to get the community to support her amendment. So I like F. Yes, because it emphasizes that Klusman's campaign had to overcome a lot of opposition. No, this percentage doesn't show that, right? We've already discussed that she did face opposition from the mayor, but that's not shown here. No, because the sentence indicates the outcome of an election without this revision. No, that doesn't make sense. Both the way, whether you say many supported or 77, you are giving an indication of the fact that the amendment did pass. So it's not H. No, because it underscores the fact that Glassman's campaign wasn't entirely successful. No, absolutely not. 77% in an election is a high majority. So definitely F is the answer. The cable car lady, as Glassman came to be known, had won. Okay, so now the first thing that we have to remember is that if I'm saying the cable car lady had won, that's my main sentence, right? So if I say the cable car lady had won, I can put as Glassman came to be known between parentheses, but then I should not have this comma, right? So that's why A is wrong. Now in B, I have commas, but I also have parentheses. So that's excessive. I don't need both. So B is out. Now C is fine because here I'm putting as Glassman came to be known between a pair of commas. So that means that it is additional information. My main sentence is the cable car lady had won. So C is a good answer. And this is not complete because a comma is missing after known, right? So the best answer is C. Okay, let's go to the second passage. Ringing in harmony. Barbershop music, four voices singing in perfect harmony without instrumental accompaniment, can be traced back to late 19th century African American barbershops. So here my main sentence is barbershop music can be traced to late 19th century African American barbershops. The descriptor is additional information, which is why it has been placed between dashes. Four voices singing in perfect harmony without instrumental accompaniment. Now, if I put without instrumental between commas, then that becomes additional information, which means that I should be able to read this part without these words, without this. And that doesn't make sense, right? I need without instrumental accompaniment here. So F is wrong. Yeah, so without any punctuation is fine as long as I close my dash because I started a dash here. So I like G. Yeah, the dash cannot be closed after harmony because without instrumental accompaniment is part of the definition. So H is wrong. And again, I need to close the dash and the dash is missing here, right? So J is also wrong. So G is the right answer. While waiting for a haircut, a patron might have improvised a melody. Two or three other customers would then harmonize higher or lower than the melody to create a song. Higher or lower than the melody. They might harmonize higher or lower. So I need to use a comparative. So this looks good. Higher or lowest is not correct because lowest is the superlative form. And you need to use the comparative. So this is wrong. Higher or lower THEN is wrong. It has to be THAN. And high or low is not comparative. So it's A. This pastime eventually became a widely known genre of music that's traditionally characterized by four men singing in red and white striped suits and straw hats. The songs usually have simple melodies and honeyed titles like Let Me Call You Sweetheart and Sweet Adeline. Okay, the writer is considering deleting the underlined portion, adjusting the punctuation as needed. Should the underlined portion be kept or deleted? So if I'm saying that the songs have simple melodies and honeyed titles like these, then I want to keep this because it gives me an example of the titles that the songs had. So it should be kept because it provides examples of song titles that help illustrate the style of the genre. So this is good. It should be kept because the song titles help explain why barbershop music is traditionally unaccompanied. No, that's not what the titles do. The titles don't tell you that the barbershop music is unaccompanied. It's just sung, so it's not G. It should be deleted because it offers information that is redundant and not necessary for comprehension. It's not redundant, right? It's the names, it's the examples of the title, so it's not redundant. It should be deleted because it detracts from the discussion of the historical origins of barbershop quartets. It doesn't detract, it gives you an example. So it's F. Barbershop music has many distinctive qualities. However, enthusiasts say the music's true thrill, all in the acoustical effect called the ringing chord or overtone. The music's true thrill is, right? I need a verb. The verb is missing here. So the music's true thrill is in the acoustical effect called the ringing chord or overtone. I cannot just say all or which is, because none of those complete the sentence. And it is starts a new sentence, so a comma here is not correct. So D. Produced when all four voices perfectly combine to create the impression, hence the term overtone, of a fifth note rising above the rest. The ringing chord is an acoustic phenomenon. Okay, which of the following placements for the underlined portion would most clearly support the definition of the ringing chord? Okay, so I'm saying that the ringing chord is produced when the four singing voices combine to create the impression of a fifth note rising above the rest. So the term overtone should come after rest because that is what the fifth note rising above the rest indicates, right? So it should come after the word rest and before the comma. Highly coveted, the ringing chord elicits what barber shoppers describe as emotional responses that are hair raising, skin prickling, and a tingling of the spine. So which choice best maintains the descriptive pattern established in the list of emotional responses? So when you say hair raising, skin prickling, you can see that I'm following a certain pattern. I'm using the noun and I'm using the ing form of the verb, right? And this creates a sort of an adjective. So the third part of the list should also follow this as per parallel structure. So hair raising, skin prickling, and spine tingling, right? The writer wants to divide this paragraph into two in order to separate the description of barbershop music in general from a focus on one specific characteristic of the genre. The best place to begin a new paragraph would be. So if you look at the paragraph in general, I'm introducing barbershop music. I'm then talking about how this pastime became a widely known genre of music. I'm saying the songs have simple melodies. And then here from C, I'm saying, while it has many qualities, enthusiasts say the true thrill lies in this acoustical effect called the ringing chord, right? So it is at C that I'm shifting from a general overview of barbershop music to a description of the ringing chord. So it is at C that I should break the paragraph into two. Quartets can only achieve this angel's voice, nevertheless, with proper breath support and precise vocal technique. Now, in the previous paragraph, I have described what this special voice is, this ringing chord, the overtone. So they can only achieve this angel's voice. Now, nevertheless is a contrasting connector. So that doesn't make sense here because I'm not contrasting anything there, right? So it's not A. Regardless also indicates contrast, so it can't be B. And besides is additionally, right? So again, that doesn't make sense because I'm not saying something additional. I'm kind of describing how quartets can achieve this angel's voice, right? So I don't need to say anything. I'll just keep it D. Quartets can only achieve this angel's voice with proper breath support and precise vocal technique. Collaboration is also crucial. Each participant must listen to the other to sing flawlessly tuned notes. Now, when I say collaboration is also crucial, that's the first sentence. And each participant must listen to the others to sing flawlessly tuned notes. That's the second sentence. They're both independent. And so a semicolon between them makes sense, right? So I like F. Now, if I put a full stop and start with as, then that second sentence is not a complete sentence, right? Because that would be as each participant must listen to the others. So that's not correct. I can't have a comma between two independent sentences. This is a grammatical error called comma splice. So this is wrong. And I do need to put a punctuation there, right? If I just don't put a punctuation, I create a run-on sentence, which is also incorrect. So the answer is F. Each participant must listen to the others to sing flawlessly tuned notes. Flawlessly tuned notes. Flawlessly is the adverb for tuned. So I can't have a comma between them because the notes are flawlessly tuned, right? So A is wrong. Sing flawlessly tuned. This is fine. Okay, I can't have a colon in the middle of a sentence, right? The colon should always come at the end of a complete sentence. So I don't need a colon here. And I don't need a comma after sing, right? Because this is what they are singing. So a comma after sing is not required. So it's B. When the singers each hold a different pitch perfect note at the correct harmonic interval, the variations in frequencies in their voices overlaps. Now, the subject for this verb is variations. What overlaps? The variations in frequencies. And variations is plural. So I need a plural verb, and the plural verb is overlap. Right? Overlaps and has overlaps are singular, and overlapping is incorrect because it doesn't have an auxiliary verb with it. Right? So the variations overlap. These audible frequencies above and below the four voices create the illusion of a fifth voice. So illusion, right? Illusion is the best answer in this context. The illusion of something is the impression of something that doesn't exist. So there isn't a fifth voice, but there is an impression of the fifth voice. So this is good. Delusion is when you believe in something which is not true, right? So it's delusional to think that the markets will rise from this point, right? So it will not happen. So that's not correct in this context. Allusion is used to refer to something. The story alludes to the biblical story of Noah's Ark. So that's reference. That's not what we want here. And to elude, illusion is to escape. The thief eluded the police. So again, now in context, that's not correct. The answer is A. Few modern instruments can create this effect because of slight tuning imperfections. Keyboards, for example, are tuned such that a piece of music sounds equally good in any key, though this prevents frequencies from interacting and overlapping necessary to ring a chord. Beyond honoring tradition, then, barbershops would be wary of adding instruments that might compromise the beloved ringing chord. So beyond honoring tradition, then, right? So here again, this then is like additional information because it's like a connector that means therefore, right? So it's not just that barbershops or this barbershop music honor is honoring tradition. It also is because they want to retain this idea of a ringing chord, right? So beyond honoring tradition, then, because this is additional, I should have commas around it. So H is the right answer. I cannot have a dash here because a dash, if you start additional information with the dash, you should close it with the dash as well. I cannot have a full stop here, so that is already discussed. And I can't have a semicolon because that should have an independent sentence before and after. So it's H. Beyond honoring tradition, then, barbershops would be wary of adding instruments that might compromise the beloved ringing chord. They would be wary of, they would be cautious, they would be not willing to do something, right? Which fits the context. They don't want to do that. So I like A. Petrified. You're not petrified about it. To be petrified is to be scared to your bones. That's not what we are saying. They're not suspecting of this. It's not something, it's not a crime that they have a convict or a suspect. And to be frugal is to save, right? So he's really frugal with his money, right? So that doesn't make sense in this context. So A. Question 30. Suppose the writer's main purpose had been to describe the various stages in the development of a genre of music. Would this essay accomplish that purpose? Yes, because the writer discusses the origins of barbershop music along with present day reactions to the genre. And that's a good answer, right? Because we do look at the origins and we also look at how even today it continues because of its special features. Yes, because the writer describes how a defining characteristic of barbershop music has evolved over time. So if you look at the defining characteristic, right, which is the ringing chord, I don't think they talk about how it has evolved over time. They describe what it is and how it was achieved, right? So I don't think G is the good answer. No, because while the writer mentions the origins of barbershop music, the main focus is on a characteristic of the genre. No, that's not true. They do speak about the origins as well as the growth of the music. So I don't think this is true. No, because the writer focuses on the emotional rather than historical features. Again, that's not true. He talks about both, right? How it started as well as the connection it had with the audience. So I think I'll go with F. Okay, so those were the first two passages. Let's grade them. Okay, I have the answer key here. Let me just pull it up. Okay. So starting from question 1. D, G, A, G, D, D, G, A, G, D, J, B, G, C, H, J, B, G, C, H, C, G, D, F, C, C, G, D, F, C, 16, G, A, F, D, H, G, A, F, D, H, B, H, D, F, B, B, H, D, F, B, J, A, H, A, H, J, A, H, A, H. Okay, so 30 is actually H, right? Not F, because they talk about the origins, but then the main focus is on a characteristic. I did think of this as an option, but I thought they do speak about the origin of the music, right? And then they, yes, definitely they get into the ringing chord. And then they describe how the ringing chord is achieved, which is what, yeah, so it is kind of heavily weighted towards the ringing chord. So perhaps that is why it would not be good to say that it describes the various stages in the development of a genre, right? Because it only describes the origin. It only describes the origin, but does not focus on the remaining, right? So H is a better answer. Okay, so hope this exercise was useful. Hit like and subscribe to the channel to receive notifications of future uploads. Let me know in the comment section what other videos you'd like me to upload. I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Take care. Bye bye.